Ever find yourself, juggling maybe half a dozen tools just to push one complex data project over the line? It feels like that sometimes, doesn't it? You've got your code in one place, your compute somewhere else, you're fighting with version control, trying to get everyone on the same page. It can be a real balancing act.
Mhm.
So what if there was this concept emerging, something that could maybe bring all that together, a kind of shortcut to, well, being informed and getting things done efficiently? That's what we're diving into today, this idea called GitHub Spark. Now, just to be clear up front, this is conceptual right now. It's an emergent idea, not a released product, but the potential it hints at, it's pretty huge.
It really is. Our mission here, is to explore how this kind of convergence could fundamentally change the game for collaborative data engineering and analytics. We're going to unpack how it might weave together code, compute, versioning, collaboration,
Hmm.
all into one, hopefully much smoother workflow. And yeah, everything we're discussing comes from a pretty detailed report that lays out this potential.
Right. So let's set the stage, lay the groundwork before we dive into the core concept itself. Okay, so to really grasp GitHub Spark, we need to quickly touch on the two big players here. First, GitHub. Most listeners probably know it, but it's way more than just code storage, isn't it? It's like the central hub for millions of developers. You've got version control, obviously, issue tracking, crucial CI/CD automation that's continuous integration, continuous deployment, basically automating the boring stuff like building and testing. And now, of course, you've got Copilot bringing AI assistance right into the coding process.
Exactly. And then the other piece is Apache Spark. This is, well, the go-to open source engine for big data. We're talking large-scale analytics, machine learning, ETL extract, transform, load. It's known for its speed, right? That in-memory computing parallel processing power. Plus, it's flexible, supports Python, Java, Scala, R. It's the powerhouse behind a lot of modern data work.
Okay, so you have GitHub, the collaboration platform, and Spark, the data engine. The million-dollar question then is, what is GitHub Spark, even conceptually? How might these two actually come together?
Yeah, so the report we looked at breaks it down into three main conceptual models or ways of thinking about it. Each tackles a different aspect of the friction data teams feel. First up is the idea of a GitHub native Spark runner. So imagine GitHub actually hosting Spark compute environments. Think integrated directly with stuff like GitHub Actions, code spaces, maybe even Copilot suggesting compute configurations. The closest thing we have now is maybe using code spaces connected to something like Databricks, but this envisions it all happening natively within GitHub itself.
Okay, interesting. Like running Spark jobs right from a GitHub action or inside a code space.
Exactly. Then the second interpretation is more about the workflow. They call it GitHub for data teams or basically data ops. This is less about GitHub running the Spark cluster itself and more about providing a version-controlled collaborative environment optimized for Spark assets. Think Spark jobs, notebooks, pipelines, specifically geared towards ML and data ops workflows. We kind of see pieces of this today with tools like DAGs Hub or LakeFS or maybe ML flow integrations, but nothing quite as integrated into the core GitHub experience.
Right, so that's more about managing the whole life cycle of the Spark code and process within GitHub.
Precisely. And the third concept is maybe the most futuristic, an AI-powered Spark assistant. So picture GitHub Copilot, but like supercharged. Specifically trained on Spark, big data engineering patterns, common pitfalls, that sort of thing. Imagine Copilot not just completing code, but offering really smart context-aware suggestions for complex data transformations or debugging tricky Spark pipeline issues. The analog now is Copilot plus maybe some specialized plugins, but this would be much deeper.
That spectrum's really interesting. You've got the infrastructure angle, the workflow angle, and the AI assistance angle. Does the report give any hints about which of these might be, easier to build first or maybe offer the biggest bang for the buck initially?
That's a good question. The report suggests these models tackle different pain points,
Hmm.
right? The Spark runner hits the developer productivity environment setup. DataOps addresses the broader workflow. The AI assistant is about individual speed. The implication seems to be that the AI piece, the Spark First Copilot, might be the, let's say, lowest hanging fruit, offers big productivity gains relatively quickly, a full native Spark runner hosted by GitHub. That sounds like a much heavier infrastructure lift, potentially.
That makes sense. Start with the intelligence layer. Okay, so you've got these concepts. But the report goes further, right? It actually outlines a kind of blueprint. If this were real, what might it actually look like under the hood?
Yeah, it proposes this GitHub Spark stack. It's built using components that mostly already exist in GitHub, which is clever. So you'd have GitHub Copilot at the top, providing those smart Spark suggestions we just talked about. Then GitHub Actions would be the engine for CI/CD. automating the testing and deployment of your Spark jobs. Makes sense. Then code spaces, but enhanced with Spark kernels. So you can do your interactive Spark coding right there in the browser in the cloud. Your actual Spark scripts, your config files, job definitions, they all leave versioned in GitHub repositories, naturally. And critically, there's this external compute layer. GitHub probably wouldn't run the massive clusters itself, right? It would connect out to services like Databricks or AWS EMR or Azure Synapse to do the really heavy data crunching.
Ah, okay. So GitHub manages the code, the workflow, the collaboration, the AI assist. But the heavy compute still happens on dedicated platforms.
Exactly. And the key features this enables are things like native Spark job versioning using Git Huge, proper CI/CD pipelines for your PySpark or Scala ETL code, automated data quality checks built into those pipelines using actions, that AI-assisted job generation and debugging we mentioned, and, importantly, pull request reviews designed for Spark notebooks and DAGs, those workflow graphs.
Wow. Okay, pulling all that together, it really does sound like it could streamline things massively, making data engineering feel less, I don't know, fragmented.
Definitely. Less fragmented, more collaborative, more automated.
From the report's view, what's the single biggest win there? If you had to pick one feature that really cuts through the complexity data teams face now.
That's tough. But I'd probably lean towards the combination of native Git versioning for Spark jobs and the CI/CD automation for ETL pipelines. Honestly, the amount of time data teams wrestle with just keeping track of different notebook versions or manually deploying pipelines, it's enormous. Having Git managed Spark job versions gives you immediate history, easy rollbacks, better collaboration, and automating the testing and deployment. That cuts down errors and just speeds everything up. It tackles some really fundamental headaches.
Yeah, I can see that. Okay, so we've got the concepts, the potential architecture, but where does the rubber meet the road? Where would this GitHub Spark actually make a tangible difference? What are some real-world scenarios?
Right. The report gives some great examples across industries. Think about finance. You could build complex fraud detection models using Spark, but manage the entire ML pipeline development, versioning, and deployment securely through GitHub with full audit trails for compliance. That's huge in finance.
Absolutely. Auditability is key there.
Or healthcare. Processing massive genomic data sets, for instance. Having that Spark pipeline auditability baked in via GitHub commits and PRs. Essential for regulatory stuff and just basic scientific reproducibility.
Makes sense. What about other areas?
Well, in media, you could use it for real-time user analytics. Tracking how Spark jobs that process user behavior are deployed, maybe using DevOps principles managed through GitHub Actions, lets you get insights faster. And retail. Imagine using Copilot, trained on Spark, to help build ETL pipelines hosted in GitHub for demand forecasting. Better forecasts mean better inventory management, less waste. It connects directly to the bottom line.
It's powerful when you see those specific examples. You can really start to picture how it fits in your own work or industry. Which brings us to the core question, really. The so what? Why should you, listening right now, care about this concept? What's the bigger picture value proposition here?
Well, there's several layers to that. First, it's about this DevOps, GataOps convergence we keep hearing about. It actually brings those essential CI/CD and version control practices, native to software development, directly into the Spark world. It helps dissolve that gap between data science and engineering.
Finally, bridging that gap.
Hopefully. Second, it promises vastly enhanced collaboration, making peer reviews on Spark jobs, even complex notebooks, a normal, easy part of the workflow, not some awkward add-on process. Imagine commenting line by line on a notebook PR.
That would be different.
Third, the cloud-native flexibility, being able to potentially trigger and manage Spark jobs on AWS, Azure, GCP, Databricks, wherever, but orchestrate it all from GitHub. That's powerful flexibility. Fourth, security and auditability. You're leveraging GitHub's enterprise security features, role-based access, compliance tools, and applying them to your Spark workflows. Big win for regulated industries or just anyone serious about governance. And finally, that AI boost. Copilot potentially accelerating Spark development, especially for those tricky transformations or boilerplate code, frees up developers to focus on the harder problems.
Those are all really strong points. But thinking about a data team that's maybe, drowning in their current backlog, which of those benefits hits hardest, fastest? Where's the immediate relief?
Good question. For immediate impact, I suspect it's the combination of enhanced collaboration and the AI boost. Think about how much time gets lost in confusing code reviews for complex Spark jobs, or just getting new team members up to speed. Making PRs for notebooks feel natural, like reviewing any other code. Plus, having Copilot handle some of the heavy lifting or boilerplate that could smooth out daily friction points pretty quickly, reduce that learning curve.
Yeah, reducing that day-to-day friction is huge. Okay, this vision sounds really attractive, but, surely someone else is working on pieces of this puzzle, right? Is GitHub Spark stepping into a totally empty field?
That's fair. No, it's not an empty field. The report acknowledges that. There are definitely tools tackling parts of this. You mentioned DAG's Hub earlier. It's very much like a GitHub specifically for ML, integrating DVC for data versioning and ML flow. Databricks itself has improved its Git integration significantly, linking repos to notebooks. Then there's LakeFS, which focuses purely on bringing Git-like version control to the data itself in data lakes. Polyaxon offers ML ops on Kubernetes, again with GitHub integrations. And you have collaborative notebooks like DeepNote or Hex that also plug into GitHub pretty well. So the pieces exist. But the potential power of GitHub Spark, as conceptualized, is pulling all of this together natively within the platform where so many developers already live and work. That unified experience is the key differentiator, potentially.
That makes sense. The integration within the familiar GitHub environment is the hook. But okay, no big idea comes without challenges. What are the potential roadblocks or risks the report calls out? We need the balanced view here.
Absolutely. And there's some significant ones to consider. Security is probably top of the list. How do you prevent sensitive Spark job logic, or worse, connection strings or data paths, from being exposed, especially in public or even internal repos if access control isn't perfect? That needs careful thought. Then there's compute cost control. If you can easily spin up potentially huge, expensive Spark clusters via a simple GitHub action commit, how do you prevent runaway costs? You need really robust governance and monitoring.
Oof, yeah. The cloud bill could get scary fast.
Exactly. Also a more fundamental point, data volume limits. GitHub itself isn't designed, nor should it be, to store petabytes of raw data. So it will always rely on integrating with external storage and data lakes. It's not a data warehouse replacement. And finally, real-time latency. The way GitHub Actions and typical CI/CD works, it's not really built for Spark streaming or jobs needing sub-second responses. This model is likely focused more on batch processing, ETL, ML training pipelines.
Those are very real, practical hurdles. They need solid answers for this to work at enterprise scale. Okay, so assuming GitHub wanted to pursue this, how might it actually happen? Does the report sketch out a possible roadmap?
It does, yeah. It lays out a pretty logical phased approach, building complexity over time. Phase 1 could be that Spark-first Copilot assistant, training Copilot specifically on Spark APIs, common patterns, maybe MLlib, that feels like a natural extension.
Okay, start with the AI.
Then phase 2, maybe introducing native Spark job templates via actions. Reusable workflows in the actions should play specifically for building, testing, deploying standard Spark job types. Phase 3 could be integrating Spark notebooks into code spaces. So getting Jupyter Lab with a proper Spark kernel running seamlessly inside a codespace environment, that enables that interactive development loop.
Right, bringing the notebook experience inside.
Phase 4 gets more ambitious. GitHub Data Lake Hooks. This is about enabling Git-like version control, perhaps via APIs, not just for the code, but for the data inputs and outputs associated with the job run. Really bridging code and data versioning.
Wow, that's the dream for many, versioning data like code.
It is. And finally, phase 5 might be a GitHub Spark marketplace, a place where teams or vendors could publish entire Spark-based workflows, pipelines, maybe pre-built feature engineering steps as reusable components, fostering an ecosystem.
That roadmap feels, well, plausible. Evolutionary rather than revolutionary all at once.
Exactly. And based on all this, the report wraps up with some specific recommendations for different groups. For GitHub itself, the advice is pretty clear. Explore partnerships. Talk to Databricks. Talk to the Apache Spark project maintainers. Talk to the big cloud data players like AWS, Azure, Google. Collaboration is key.
Makes sense. What about data teams?
For data teams, the recommendation is start preparing now, even without GitHub Spark. Adopt the tools GitHub already offers. Use actions for CI/CD on your current Spark stuff. Experiment with code spaces. Look into data version control tools like DVC alongside Git. Get comfortable with these paradigms because that's the direction things are likely heading.
Be proactive, basically.
Right. And for enterprises, the advice is to start building internal standards, specifically DevSecOps standards, around your Spark development, leveraging GitHub's existing enterprise features for security, compliance, and workflow management. Don't wait for the perfect integrated tool. Start implementing the best practices now with the tools you have.
So actions people can take today to get ready for this potential future. That's practical. Okay, so let's try to wrap this up. This concept, GitHub Spark, it really feels like it could be a significant step. It's painting a picture of data engineering that's more collaborative, smarter with AI assistance, and truly cloud native.
Absolutely. I mean, the potential to bring Spark development right into the core GitHub experience.
Yeah.
It could genuinely redefine how data teams operate, how they write code, test it, deploy it, manage those complex pipelines at scale. It tackles some really deep-seated pain points we see across the industry.
So, thinking about everything we've unpacked today, the possibilities, the different models, the very real challenges too. Here's something for you, the listener, to chew on. How might a fully realized GitHub Spark fundamentally change the skills you need or the way your team is structured for tackling data projects in the future? Something to think about. We definitely encourage you to keep exploring these ideas.